This is a show about getting spooked for fun, and neither one of the hosts are associated with the attractions discussed in any way, except for those skeletons in Devin's closet. Some topics may go from ghoulish to ghastly, so viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to the Great American Scream.
Wonderful. Do you wanna start the show? Adam, do you want to start the show? Adam.
No.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah.
Adam, do you want to start the show?
Adam. I'm I don't like this beckoning tone that you've taken on.
I'm standing in the doorway.
Yeah.
With a lot of cash, and I'm going, Adam, come to be in the show.
I don't know about that.
Hey, welcome to the Great American Scream. My name's Devin Ray.
My name is Adam O'Connell. I don't know why it feels like it's been a while since our last episode. It's truly been 7 days.
Yeah, it's been one extra day than usual.
Yeah, since we recorded, I guess. But yes, I was back. It feels like we're coming back from a holiday or something. That's not at all true. We had a regular episode last week, and we're about to have a regular episode this week. So happy
totally
Tuesday.
Normal, regular, totally normal.
I mean, comparable to last week. It's decidedly more normal than last week's episode, which I finally got the chance to actually listen to while I was doing laundry today. It was pretty unhinged.
Last week's episode was a lot. Editing it was a lot.
Yeah.
Which is not normal for me, because normally I just kind of do a pass over to see if there were any problem points. But last week I decided it needed a special little touch.
It was pretty good. But this week, we're back to a more, I mean, we're still talking about business, which is kind of funny. So we have talked on the show about the science of fear before, and the science of things that scare you and why we get scared. And obviously we talk about haunted attractions all the time, but we haven't really talked about how haunted attractions scare you, because one would say there's a simple answer to that question. Like, they're scary. Things jump out at you, and that's scary. But the haunted attraction industry is very large, very complicated, and very interesting. So I thought that would be a very interesting thing to talk about today. Kind of the science behind what makes a haunted attraction, what makes the perfect haunted attraction, and does the perfect haunted attraction exist? Of course it doesn't. Are we qualified?
The Mummy Returns.
Are we qualified to talk about this? Also no.
No, yeah.
But through some comprehensive research that I've done, we're going to talk about the haunted attractions industry, how the industry works, and how a haunted attraction works, because it is a lot more interesting than you think that it is.
Let's do it.
So I feel like at some point on the show before, we've talked about like where haunted attractions came from or where haunted houses came from. I can't pinpoint exactly where, but haunted attractions themselves are a relatively new form of entertainment. They started being associated with Halloween, and Halloween, as we know it today, culturally didn't really form until about the 1950s. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Halloween's existed for longer than that, but how we celebrate Halloween today, what we do for Halloween today, that in America culturally really wasn't a thing until the 1950s. And the haunted attraction industry is also a American invention. It's kind of like baseball and jazz music, where it's one of the few things where you can actually say this started in the United States.
Yeah, it's that, jazz, baseball, and comic books, and those are the only things we have.
That's basically it. They have some origins in earlier attractions outside of the United States. There were some attractions, leisure activities in 19th century London that were these houses of like illusions and magic that people would walk through, kind of like if you remember all the way back to our Haunted Mansion episode, which I think is the second episode of the whole podcast.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
We talked about how one of the original pitches for the Haunted Mansion was this kind of like museum of the weird or illusion house. That's kind of what
and literally Walter's museum of his cool stuff.
That's kind of what these were. In 1802, the famous Madame Tussauds, who is a real person, it's not just what they call the weird wax
It's not just my
museums.
drag name.
in tourist cities. Madame Tussauds created her infamous exhibition of wax figures of decapitated French figures, such as Marie Antoinette, King Louis XVI, Marat, and Robespierre, which is pretty cool of Madame Tussauds, may I say.
Very powerful of Miss Tussauds. Thank you so much.
This was the kind of stuff she did, along with making death masks of those that were executed at the guillotine, and how that became fun wax museum where you take pictures with fake Willem Dafoe or whatever. I don't know exactly how that happened.
Yeah, it's a tragic fall, honestly. If it was still decapitated figures, would love that.
Well, she named her original exhibition the Chamber of Horrors, which at most Madame Tussauds locations is still a thing. Their scary sections always still called the Chamber of Horrors, which is cool. Haunted attractions, as we know them today, really started to appear in the 1980s in the United States. Why? It's because in the 70s and 80s, teens started to get rowdy during Halloween time. In like the 60s and the 80s, they're vandalizing, causing mayhem and mischief, drinking and driving.
So we need to do something to keep the teens off the streets.
Communities started looking for other ways to keep teens who were too old to trick or treat entertained during the holiday, other than vandalization, pumpkin smashing, drinking, and or driving.
Which if I was in charge, I would keep it just like, let's give them stuff to vandalize. They need to get their druthers
sort of
out.
like what is it, like a rage room? Those things are called, where you go in and break stuff.
Yeah, destruction therapy or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever those people do.
So the first haunted houses were organized by local communities and charitable organizations. They were a very much like homegrown, your local, maybe you're like your town dentist and a couple other people on the board like put it up. And it was for 2 nights, and it was just something to keep the teens off the streets on Halloween night.
And it was also a way to employ all the extra people that didn't have a job in the Halloween season. They get to serve the teens.
And also Walt Disney did have a hand in the iconography of a haunted house.
Hey, you! Oh, it's that time of the podcast again. We pull back the curtain. Oh, Walter's there. Get out of here.
He can't keep getting away with this. Disneyland's Haunted Mansion opened in 1969, and that kind of gave the iconography of like the haunted house, the ghost house. And Knott's Scary Farm held its first annual event all the way back in 1973. It does make it the oldest still running haunted attraction in the United States, I believe. Knott's Scary Farm, which is pretty cool. It's certainly the longest theme park one, because Halloween Horror Nights didn't start until like 20 years later. And the 80s were very good for haunted attractions, as characters from major film franchises like Hellraiser, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween began to appear in attractions. And that is also kind of where there's 2 main reasons why horror movies get released when they do. Because if you notice, there are some horror movies that get released like beginning of October, but a lot of them... Yeah, a lot of them get released a month or so in advance. And there's 2 big reasons for that. It's Halloween costumes and haunted attractions. They want to release the movie early enough so that people will decide to be it for Halloween, and nothing else good, better comes up before Halloween happens. And then same thing for haunted attractions. My siblings and I in our little text group chat, we were doing some Halloween Horror Nights 31 speculation. And we were talking about some movies that could potentially become themes for houses. But most of those movies for an event like Halloween Horror Nights, those movies are going to have to come out like in the summer in order to give them enough time to make the house, if not earlier.
Avatar 2 is going to have to really get in under the wire to have all those haunted attractions ready.
So the 80s started to be really good for haunted attractions because of all the film iconography. So the film industry helped the attraction industry and vice versa. And the industry itself was kind of upended in 1984. Prior to this, a lot of haunted attractions were very much home haunts run by just kind of like local people, non-business owners.
Together.
Yeah. In 1984, a fire inside the haunted castle at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey.
Oh, no.
Killed 8 teenagers and injured 7 more people, shutting down literally hundreds, if not thousands, of home haunted attractions. as new industry standards started to be established for fire and safety and other regulations. And because of all the new regulations, a lot of people could no longer afford to run haunts in their home because they couldn't afford a sprinkler system to install in their garage or whatever. So by the early
Big
90s,
Brother coming in, shutting down all these haunted hayrides. I think
big
that's
haunted
not fair.
house.
Big haunted house comes in. I don't think that's fair because I don't think this is the fault of the haunted attraction. I think this is the fault of New Jersey as an institution, and I think we just need to get rid of it. Because you know that fire action park was still around at this time. I think we need to get rid of it.
We can't do an episode on Action Park because it really has nothing to do with anything we talk about. But if anyone ever wants to just DM me and talk about Action Park, I will gladly talk about it with you.
Or if you want me to call my dad on podcast right now, which is my
or
dad's
my
favorite
mom
thing ever.
Yeah,
because my dad loved Action Park.
My mom and my uncle have both sustained injuries at Action Park. It's a Northeast institution. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. But
and
so
it's back today. Actually, it is what we're talking about today.
Yeah,
because it is back. It's been around. It was called Mountain Creek, and I've talked about this because Mountain Creek was a childhood go-to for me for snowboarding and water parking.
It's just Action Park.
They're doing it again. They renamed it again.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have to move on.
So by the early 90s, the private sector began creating for-profit haunted hauses, so haunted houses that were businesses. And that is where most of the industry is today. Unless you go to like a
profit incentive.
Unless you go to like a home haunt on Halloween night, most of the haunted attractions you will go to are for-profit businesses that run for extended periods of time. And, you know, pros and cons to that. It's a for-profit business, so
there's no ethical consumption under capitalism.
But also, it does give it a nice budget, and all the people that work there are paid. So
yeah, it's
ups
true.
And downs.
They're probably not unionized, but you know.
But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the haunted attractions industry and why it is so profitable. So Halloween is the second biggest holiday industry in the United States behind Christmas.
I was going to go Labor Day.
Yeah, Americans, the only thing Americans spend more money on holiday-wise than Halloween is Christmas stuff. And the haunted attractions industry actually accounts for a pretty small portion of what's spent on Halloween. Most of it goes to decoration, candy, and costumes. Yeah. But in 2016, Haunt World estimated that there were about 1,200 commercial haunted attractions, 3,000 charitable ones, and 300 amusement park haunts in the United States.
And that's good work for Haunt World to do, because the week before Haunt World published that, they were doing stuff on the election and different constituencies, so I'm glad that they kind of skewed back to what they really got into the game for.
I guess, yeah. And the amount of guests that a haunt sees can depend on the size, location, and how long the haunt runs. A small haunt can expect to bring in around 10,000 to 20,000 guests per season, while mega haunts like Halloween Horror Nights can be expected to that attendance a night, sometimes exceeding the amount of people that were there during the day, which when I think we went to Halloween Horror Nights, that was correct. There were way more people at Halloween Horror Nights than were actually at the park during the day.
Yeah, literally, and that was during a oh my god, are we about to be out of a pandemic or are we still in it moment of life? So that was like...
Yeah. Those mega attractions like Halloween Horror Nights, like Not Scary Farm, really only make up for about 1% to 4% of the industry, but can gross a quarter of $1 billion by themselves. There is a combined. So there is a lot of money to be made in those mega haunts. Other than that, most of the stuff that I've been reading about like owning and operating a haunted attraction is you're not going to make a ton of money doing this. You will make money if it's good, but you are not going to make a ton of money. You do it for the game. You do it for the love of the game, not for the...
This isn't our exit strategy, this one.
No. Okay. I think it's the next logical step after. I think what it is it's the October seasonal event at Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex or whatever we're going to rename this establishment.
Yeah, we definitely need to be thinking of events.
It's an after hours event. Pizzaplex closes at 8:30, and then from 8:30 to like 1 a.m. is the haunted attraction.
Yeah, and I think that one goes over better. You know, again, we can't really do an after dark Christmas event with Freddy and his friends. I think that Halloween is the one time a year we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, we got to market to the like Michael Eisner. We have to market to the teens.
To the teens, the Videopolis teens of the 80s and 90s.
Crowd.
I think maybe the other time of year is kind of that June graduation time where we can do
like a grad night situation.
Thing. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we'll do a part 2 to that episode with more of our business plans later. Anyway, and the as for the cost of what it like to get into haunted attractions, depending on the size and location of the attraction, $20 is like a good baseline for haunted attractions. Like back in the day, it cost you like
a nickel,
a Buffalo dollar to get into a haunted attraction or whatever.
Buffalo dollar.
And then with more major attractions nowadays hovering around 50, peak nights at major haunts like Knott's and Halloween Horror Nights can reach up to $100 a night.
Absolutely insane. I can't believe we paid that much money.
We did get a discount though.
Yes, we did.
As far as the cost of running a haunt, what it costs to create your own haunt if you're interested. Haunted houses are very expensive to construct between decorating, operating costs, and following safety codes. In addition to just renting the raw space by itself, one haunt owner that I read about recommends budgeting about $15 to $25 for decorations and special effects per square foot of your attraction, while others recommend $25 to $35, depending on what your budget is. So for
That's
for like a 5,000 square foot warehouse, which is maybe average size, a little on the bigger side for a haunted attraction, that's anywhere from $75,000 to $125,000 or much more, depending on your budget, just for decorations and effects alone. So
that means we need to make sure that we're lobbying Congress for a lower minimum wage, so we don't have to pay these teens jack squat.
Yeah. It's also reported that most haunted attractions spend about $2 to $3 per capita on advertising. So I was curious about this. Let's say take a big haunt like Halloween Horror Nights, because big numbers are fun.
Yes.
Let's call it 20,000 people a night at 26 nights. That's about just over 500,000 guests per season, give or take. Some of the bigger nights might go up to 30,000, slower nights maybe 10,000, whatever. We're hovering around 500,000 guests. If we assume Universal is spending on the higher end for advertising, and we know that they are because we've seen all those billboards on I-4 and those very scary TV commercials, we multiply that by 3, and we've got $1.56 million on advertising alone. And to be honest, they are probably spending much more on that.
Yeah,
so.
That seems like a low ball estimate.
Yeah. And the budget for Halloween Horror Nights itself is probably several million, much more expensive than your average haunt. But that's obvious as it's one of the biggest events in the world. My secret dream is to open like a Halloween Horror Nights-esque attraction in Central Park in New York City. So I need to start knowing these numbers.
Never gonna happen.
Never.
Maybe in Adams, Manhattan. Maybe in Eric Adams, Manhattan, it can happen. But not... At least not in de Blasio's.
No. I have all sorts of pitches for it. Ask me about it sometime. Anyway, one of the other big spending points for haunted attractions is safety and safety regulations. Obviously, safety is a huge concern for haunted attractions as they can perpetuate an unsafe environment. Obviously, all people that work at and go to haunted houses are just normal people, but there's a big combination of our normal.
Okay.
Our normal.
Yeah, sure. Let's take that as an assumption.
A violent theme, plus loud music, plus darkness, plus sometimes drinking, plus people getting scared, plus tight spaces, plus special effects can lead to... Plus haunted attractions are all about the safe illusion of danger, and even extreme haunts, you don't want to worry about actual danger, of course.
Right, unless you're Russ McKamey.
Yeah, which... I tried not to think about during this outline, but I can't. And this goes for both things like fire safety as well as safety and regulation for actors and employees, because it's not just about protecting guests. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but scare acting is a very dangerous job. So in 1988, following the Six Flags fire, there were new codes adopted for haunted attraction safety, which required automatic sprinkler systems, smoke detectors, and clearly marked emergency exits, which, by the way, prior to 1988, not required for haunted attractions.
Why would they be?
No emergency exits, no smoke detectors, no automated sprinkler systems.
Well, you have to imagine Congress wasn't thinking... We need to make sure we put in we got to think about the haunted houses. Congressmen didn't know what haunted houses were.
Yeah. Nowadays, haunted attractions are also required to have an emergency voice communication system. Now that tech is there, and there are some variations state by state. For example, in Illinois, all haunted attractions must be inspected by a fire marshal. This is the one that made me laugh. The fire marshal both needs to go through it, kind of like during the day with no special effects, and then he also needs to go through it as an attraction to test it both times.
I love that. That part of the law was put into place by a very excited fire marshal who just really loves the spook.
Fire marshal must be able to go through attraction both during day and during operating hours. Also must get coupon for one free ice
be able to bring
cream.
His kid. He must also be able to put on his favorite mask at the end.
Good for these fire marshals. Good for these Illinois fire marshals. Also, so anything that looks like it could pose a real danger to guests in a haunted attraction is probably fake. And if it's real, it's handled by a professional and far away from guests at all time. Because if haunted attractions are good at what they do, then you are going to, at some points, feel the illusion of being unsafe. And you're going to look at things and go, that looks real. That looks like a dangerous, real thing. One of the biggest examples of this is chainsaws in haunted attractions. Most professional haunts will not just throw any old actor a chainsaw, because at most professional haunts you go to, the chainsaws that are being used are real chainsaws. They do not use prop chainsaws. Right. They are real chainsaws, but they don't have the blade on them. That's what makes them safe to operate in the house. They just make a loud, scary noise. And that's what people are afraid of with chainsaws. They're afraid of the loud, scary noise.
I would argue they're afraid of a very sharp blade going into their soft flesh body. But
it is an envelope violation.
Yeah.
The thing that triggers that fear is the sound of the chainsaw.
Yes.
So at Halloween Horror Nights, chainsaw performers are required to go through several screenings, mostly physical, testing how much they can lift over their heads and how many push-ups they can do and stuff like that.
That part's just for fun. That part's just a competition and they put it up on the chalkboard.
This ensures both guest safety and performer safety, as injuries are very common amongst haunted house performers.
It also guarantees that they're all yoked.
Yeah, so every person you see at a haunted house that is operating a chainsaw is either yoked or like somehow are not authorized to be operating that chainsaw.
There are two kinds of scare actors. Mm-hmm. There are those that are yoked and those that cannot operate chainsaws.
Yeah. So, speaking of injuries, they are the most common safety hazard at haunted attractions for both performers and guests. Common injuries in haunted houses include slips and falls, carbon monoxide and smoke, exposed protrusions, which is like hitting your head on props, exposed nail, stuff like that, and like just general freak accidents.
That's interesting. Those are also all hazards if you go to the experimental theater wing at New York University. That's an interesting kind of crossover.
Also, one of the biggest hazards is what's kind of colloquially referred to as too scary reactions.
Too scary!
So, like, this is the reason why people with heart conditions, epilepsy, pregnant people, or other conditions are advised not to experience some attractions, because heart attacks in haunted houses are not common, but they have happened before. In 2017, a 50-year-old man died of cardiac arrest in a Georgia haunted attraction, and that is not the only case of it. And the thing is, like, they put the disclaimer there because it's not like, I would not have had the heart attack if I had not entered the haunted house. It's more that like my condition was aggravated by the haunted attraction, which is like the weird legal footing that it kind of stands on. But two scary reactions also include the activation of the fight or flight response in patrons, which is why scare acting is a very high risk job. And most scare actors that I know and that I have talked to will tell you that they have either been hit or at least swung at by a guest. Most of them I know have been hit before. And a lot of these reactions, like believing in the good faith of humanity, a lot of these reactions are accidental. Some people,
of course they are,
just flail or instinctively try and push something away from them and hit a scare actor, but not always. There are assholes who try and be tough or whatever, think it's appropriate to hit scare actors when you pay to get into the house, Chad.
Yeah. Even though all it does is reinforce the fact that you were actually scared.
Yeah.
this thing actually did work on you,
Yeah.
you little bitch. You were scared enough to hit a person.
Yeah, and it still puts the performer in danger no matter what. So scare training, like the scare actor training, has kind of changed to adapt this. Most scare actors are now trained to disappear as quickly as they popped out in order to get out of the guest's way. This not only serves as like, you know, if you look at a zombie that just popped out at you for more than 5 seconds, it becomes very apparent that this is a man in a costume.
Right.
So it's not only an advantage from the scare
it serves
standpoint,
two
but it gets,
purposes.
the actor out of the way. And the obvious answer would be to not get close enough to hit, but unfortunately that's not an option in a lot of haunts. A lot of haunts are teeny tiny or have very narrow hallways because they're so scary. I know in most haunts I've been in, actors get pretty up close and personal with my face and my general body area. Never touch, but they are very
do not
good at
touch.
getting very close and then backing up. In fact, one of the most common injuries at haunted houses is bloody noses, not from hitting, but from accidentally bumping into the guy behind or in front of you after getting scared.
Of course.
Which is interesting. I know because in haunts like Halloween Horror Nights, where you kind of enter in like the fear conga line, if the person in front of you stops, it does kind of create a traffic problem. And if you'll try and move because something scares you, but you can't because the person in front of you is also not moving. It's happened to me plenty of times before.
It's happened to us all. We, Adam, you and I were part of the scare conga line.
Yeah.
At Halloween Horror Nights 40.
I have sustained injuries in haunted houses. I pulled my shoulder in, I think it was
Yes, you
Wicked
did.
Growth. I think it was Wicked Growth Realm of the Pumpkin that I pulled my shoulder in. So when safety is not handled properly in haunted attractions, it can lead to lawsuits. And there have been plenty of lawsuits regarding haunted attractions. I would like to take a brief lawsuit detour because some of these are very interesting and also point to a pretty big thing about the haunted attractions industry. So starting in 1996, and by the way, in all of these lawsuits I'm about to talk about, all of the people who were injured are totally fine. So they are good. It is okay to chuckle if some of them are a little silly.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So in 1996, in Mays versus Gretna Athletic Boosters, Inc., a Louisiana appeals court had before it a 10-year-old girl who was frightened when a character at a haunted house jumped out at her. She ran directly into a cinder block wall covered with plastic sheeting. Which is very unfortunate. The court rejected the plaintiff's argument that covering a brick wall with black visqueen in a dark haunted house is an unreasonably dangerous condition. So in this and none of the ones I'm about to talk about, all the ones I'm about to talk about, the court sides of the haunted house. And in this one, they said, quote, "The nature of a haunted house is to frighten its patrons. In order to get the proper effect, haunted houses are dark and contain scary and or shocking exhibits. Patrons in a Halloween haunted house are expected to be surprised, startled, and scared by the exhibits, but the operator does not have a duty to guard against patrons reacting in bizarre, frightened, and unpredictable ways. Operators are duty-bound to protect patrons only from unreasonably dangerous conditions, not from every conceivable danger."
That tracks.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote this decision, well put.
That's effectively what all of these ended up as. And again, in 1973, I know this woman's last name is probably not pronounced Bonanno, but I cannot think of another way to pronounce it. Bonanno?
Bonanno. But I love that you went Minions with it.
Yeah.
I really like that angle.
I'll say Bonanno. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, woman, who was 84 in 1973, so you are probably no longer with us.
You are definitely dead.
So in Bonanno versus Continental Casualty Co., it involved an 84-year-old woman who, while in the, quote, devil's den of a haunted attraction, where a person disguised as the devil was mechanically projected into the room on an overhead track, Louisiana appeals court declared the visitor assumed the risk of being frightened, jostled, and pushed about when she entered the attraction. She complained that it caused her to fall and be jostled about.
We have to change the disclaimer at the beginning of this podcast to say that you, by listening, assume the risk of being frightened, jostled, and pushed about.
Yeah. Quote, this is also Louisiana Appeals Court, who said, quote, "She obviously had knowledge she could anticipate being confronted by exhibits designed to startle and instill fear. She had to realize that the very nature of the attraction was to cause patrons to react in bizarre, frightened, and unpredictable ways. It would be inconsistent," the court decided, to, quote, "allow the plaintiff to recover for damages which resulted from her being frightened. precisely the effect of the haunted house was calculated to produce.
I'm so sorry, Mrs. Bonanno. Is it? I don't know how to tell you that you paid to go
get
into
scared.
a place where you would get jostled and spooked and pushed about.
Yeah, and
you cannot come to court today and ask the state of Louisiana to intervene and say that, in fact, you were jostled and pushed about. And that is wrong, when that is exactly the service you paid for.
Yeah. And this is a thing too, that we don't see this like injury stuff so much as in 2021 and 2022, which is the year we're in now. Whoopsie. What we see nowadays is kind of people who bring their young children to haunted houses and then ask for refunds because their children were too scared.
Yeah. Which
is silly, in my opinion.
Where do you draw the line, lady?
Yeah. So in 1997, in Galan versus Covenant House, New Orleans, the appeals court addressed New Orleans, excuse me. The appeals court addressed
Louisiana.
Yeah, it all goes down in Louisiana, evidently. The appeals court addressed an injury to a haunted house patron that occurred after her visit was thought to be over. Now, this one's interesting. This opened up a new precedent. There's actually 2 lawsuits about this. I'll talk about the second one in a moment, where the question was raised over whether or not scares should be allowed after the perceived end of the haunted house.
Okay.
This woman exited the haunted house and was thanked for coming, after which she was injured when Jason, for he's the Friday the 13th character, who is hiding behind a Visqueen covered fence, I started up a chainsaw for the purpose of frightening the visitors one last time. So she complained, she went, listen, the haunted house was over, you should not be allowed to scare me anymore.
Right, but one thing they didn't think of is the fact that this wasn't a scare actor portraying Jason. This was Jason from Friday the 13th. You can't sue Jason. I mean, you can, but it's never been done. But you can't sue Jason for hurting you. That's kind of his whole thing. But also, ma'am, you bring this. I am so thankful that you bring this to us. But the problem is, the precedent we would have to set is that we would have to put a big blinking sign in neon lights saying, "This is the end of the attraction."
So, the court said about this, quote, "It appears to be plaintiff's contention that this last exhibit, because it was unexpected, created an unreasonable risk of harm. The fact that the plaintiff did not expect this last exhibit does not mandate the exhibit is unreasonable."
Just because this lady didn't have the breadth of imagination to think of, we're going to throw another spook in there right after the end, does not mean that the creators of said spook were in the wrong.
Listen, I have to tell you, this has happened to me in like 6 or 7 haunted houses. It scares me every single time. I fall for it every time. I see the outside, I see those trees, and I go, surely this must be the end of the haunted house.
And this is why you're suing for damages.
That or the because I still remember to this day, the biggest scare that I got when we were at Halloween Horror Nights is when we were going into the scary Horror in the Heartland house, and before we actually entered the haunted house, there was that wall, and Meaty Meats popped up and got us real good. He got us really, really good.
There was a similar thing at the end of one of the others. It might have been Scary, Ohio.
I think it was also Scary, yeah.
Yeah, when the man with the chainsaw was right at the door, like right under the exit
He
sign.
was lit by daylight, folks. Like he was that close.
We could see him holding a chainsaw, and it did not stop us from getting spooked.
Yeah.
And this is why I've brought this case before the court today. If you see Exhibit A, and it's a picture of my pants, which have been peed.
So this trick in haunted houses is known as the, quote, Carrie effect, named after the movie Carrie, because at the end of Carrie, spoiler alert, you think the film is over, that Carrie is dead, there is no more scares, and then when her friend is going to place her flowers on her grave, Carrie's hand pops out for one last scare. And we see this in horror movies all the time now, and it's called the Carrie effect when you use it in a haunted house. And so this was finally kind of cemented, put to bed in 2015, with Griffin v. The Haunted Hotel.
Recently settled law.
Where the plaintiff was injured while running away and being chased from a final scare on the way out of an attraction. And this was California. The California Appeals Court said, quote, being chased within the physical confines of the haunted trail, this is a haunted trail, as you are on their property by a chainsaw-carrying maniac is a fundamental part and inherent risk of this amusement. The injured person voluntarily paid money to experience it.
That's exactly what I said. The phrase being chased within the physical confines of the haunted trail by a chainsaw-carrying maniac is a fundamental part of this amusement.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's a selling point,
Yeah.
you would say.
Like, listen, as long as you are on the haunted attractions property, you are game to get scared. If you started driving home and he popped out of your trunk, then you got a case.
Yeah, if you arrived to work on Monday morning and you sat down at the desk of the orthodontist as the reception and in walked Jason with a big chainsaw and he sawed your desk in half, that would be unconscionable.
Sort of like an end of Sister Location, FNAF Sister Location kind of situation where if you are in front of your
FNAF Sister Location.
if you are in front of your TV with your popcorn watching your vampire soap opera or whatever,
and your exotic butters on top of the television,
and then the animatronic crawls in, then you have reason to sue, but not while you were in the establishment.
Yes.
Michael Afton. Anyway, so in general, these lawsuits set a precedent for the haunted attractions industry that getting what you paid for is not assault, nor is it negligence.
Love that.
Which, in general, allows haunts to get more and more extreme without facing any legal repercussion, because as long as A, nobody's put in any real or negligent danger, and B, you are still on the property of the haunted attraction. The person has paid to get in, therefore agreeing to be subject to these horrors. You're good. You're good, gang.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the assumed level of risk does not rise to physical harm like that.
Right.
Like they said, you can't be protected from. You must be protected from obvious forms of physical risk, but you cannot be protected from what will happen if you freak out in a way that we could not have anticipated.
Yeah, exactly. So finally, I want to talk about a couple of other mechanics of a haunted house and some tricks that haunted houses use to scare you that you might not notice. Because what I think is so interesting is that haunted houses are really good at scaring you and really good at keeping you moving through the haunted house. Like, there are a lot of people that say, I want out right now, where is the nearest exit? But most people, even when they want out of the haunted house, will continue moving forward, which is very interesting. So I wondered how they do it. This also contains some tips on how not to get scared in a haunted house if you are being dragged along by your podcast co-host who really likes haunted houses, even though you don't.
That's interesting.
So, one of the biggest factors affecting how a haunted house is laid out and designed is what's called throughput. This is essentially a productivity standard, or how many people a haunted house can get through in a certain amount of time. And you want to calculate that number based on how much money you want to make a night and blah, 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 blah. So, for instance, to get 500 people through an attraction in a single night, one haunt owner could calculate that groups of 6 entering the haunt every 25 seconds would meet this goal. So you want to have an attendant at the front of the house waiting 25 seconds in between parties, sending in the next group. And not calculating this number correctly can do a couple things. It can slow down your lines. It can rush people through the house on the other end, or it can break what's considered one of the cardinal rules of haunted attractions, which is you should never run into the group that went in before you. A big exception to this rule is huge theme park haunts or other ginormous haunted attractions. Haunts that are seeing thousands of guests a night cannot afford to space out those entries for reason other than fire codes and maximum occupancy of the house, which is one of the only reasons if you go to like Not Scary Farm or Halloween Horror Nights that they pause the line, is just to make sure there's not an excessive number of people in the building. Yeah. If you go somewhere like that on a busy night, not only will you wait on average like 20 to 30 minutes to get into a house, depending on how busy the night is, you'll enter in that kind of fear conga line, sometimes single file. And the only other reason for pauses is when they're like switching out the cast. Other than that, they're really trying to get as many people through as possible. They really could not care if you run into the person in front of you. On a slow night, then they'll space it out, but...
Yeah, hey, listen, they already know that if you get a nosebleed, they are not legally liable.
Yeah, so go ahead. However, also, you don't want to rush people through a haunt. Even if you want to get people through, you want them to get scared and enjoy themselves. So this is where the concept of scaring forward comes in, which I really like the phrasing
Love
of.
that.
So scaring forward is how most scares in a haunted attraction are designed. You want people to get scared and keep moving, not stop for more than a second or back up. This is why scares should never block the path of the group. Nothing should ever jump out into your walkway that's going to stop the group and stop people from moving.
If there's any kind of entrance into the thoroughfare, it must be behind entered guests so that they are pushed forward.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that when I go through haunted houses with people, and some people are afraid to go through doorways because they're afraid something's going to pop out of them in the doorway. Something's never going to pop out at you in the doorway. It's going to be at the window next to the doorway, but not in the doorway. You're safe in doorways.
Yeah.
Like an earthquake, you are safe in doorways.
Much like an earthquake, you are safe in door frames and bathtubs.
Yeah. So here's the pro tip. If you're going into a haunted house with a group of 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and you do not want to be the main recipient of the scare, walk towards the front of the group. I know it is intimidating, but in order to keep scaring forward, it is common practice to scare the side or the back of the group so the group continues moving. Because if you scare the first person in the group, they're going to stop, and the rest of the group's going to stop behind them. If you scare the person in the side or the back, it's going to push the group forward.
I think that's really smart.
Yeah. And also walking in the middle of a group while often feeling rather safe to have like beloved friends flanking you on both sides often does put a target on your back as the most scared one of your group. So if you don't want to be the one receiving the scares, walk in the front of the group. And also a reminder that on average, an average sized haunted house will take anywhere between 3 and 10 minutes to walk through, depending on the size of the haunt. Very large haunts and extreme... The haunt, yeah. Very large haunts and extreme haunts, though, can take 30 minutes to an hour to walk through. The 13th gate in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, takes about 45 minutes to walk through, depending on the day.
No, actually,
that's crazy.
That's one episode of prestige television. No, thank you.
Yeah. Therefore, before you go to a haunt, know approximately how long how long a walkthrough takes so that you can like prepare yourself. Don't go to a haunted house expecting it to be a 5-minute walkthrough and end up in there for 20 minutes. So actors hide in what are known as scare pockets or boo holes, depending on the region of the United States. Sort of a soda pop situation.
When we do our joint drag show together, we're known as Scare Pocket and Boo Hole.
Boo Hole is a good drag name.
Boo Hole is
Scare
really
Pocket
good.
less good, but Boo Hole's pretty good. As you start to like walk through a haunted house more and go through more haunts, you can obviously see where the scare pockets, where the boo holes are. They are not really. People don't try and hide boo holes. Like there are some good hidden ones, like bringing like a picture frame down, but most of them are pretty obvious. They're like door frames with curtains on them, or just dark holes, dark chasms. And you don't really need to hide it. Seeing the boo hole does not really prevent you from getting scared. I've been in plenty of haunted attractions where I have looked directly in the boo hole, made eye contact with the scare actor before they popped out, and they popped out and I still got scared anyway. It doesn't really stop you from getting scared.
Yeah.
If anything, it makes you go, oh God, oh God, oh God, here they come. And they pop out at you, which is fun. And some scare pockets also have multiple places for an actor to pop out of, or you can access both sides of the wall, allowing an actor to get you once around the corner and then the other side as well when you round that corner. Which I love when that happens because it's almost shameful. It's like a fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice.
Yeah. You can't fool a fooler.
Yeah. The scare itself, there's all sorts of different methods for scaring people. It is an art form. And making people afraid and making people laugh are two of the hardest things to do creatively. Side note, I think people that are good at one are often good at the other. People that are good at making people laugh are also often good at making people scared, and vice versa. Bo Burnham, I think, is a great example of that.
Sure.
But that's a side note. But there are two kind of main avenues nowadays in haunted attractions on how to scare people. Either realistic gore or startling them. That's pretty much it.
Those are the two.
That's kind of it. Like, think about the last haunted house that you went through. Can you think of any scare that you had that was not realistic gore or startling, excluding like an extreme haunt? That's pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is because
boiled it down.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is because those are the few things that actually cause an adrenaline rush in people without actually putting them in any real danger.
Yeah.
And obviously, houses will elevate these scares with loud noises and with lights and stuff. And then haunts will also sometimes disorient you as soon as you get into the house with strobe lights or smoke.
Yeah.
Or just generally messing you up before you even get through the house.
Yeah. Like, hey, we all understand there's a lot of frills going on. You're spending $25 to $35 a square foot in this place, but really all you need to be spending money on is the sprinklers and the well-marked exits. Other than that, it can be cardboard for all I care.
Yeah.
A little cardboard boo hole and me with my face painted a funny color and I just jump out and go, oh,
yeah.
And that's the entire experience.
And do beware of bait and switches, though, which is very common in haunts, such as a prop or a big
this is
set
actually
piece.
not a haunt. This isn't haunt
in
advice.
general.
This is about renting an apartment. Be careful. Bait and switch is illegal in the states of New York and California. So please let the Better Business Bureau know. I think I don't know who does that.
I don't know who you report that to. But if you are ever in a haunt and you see like a super impressive prop or set piece or lighting or something in front of you, something's about to pop out at you because you're meant to be distracted.
Yeah. Stop the haunted house and say, "This is a lovely bush.
Yeah,
I like this bush. Good job."
Yeah,
you can just start clapping, and then the lights will come on, and the actor will come out and bow.
Yeah, this is a hack. Few people know about this one. But as a whole, we could talk about the haunted attractions industry and for hours, even without getting that deep into it. But in general, it is an industry that is built upon a kind of shared love that people have of not even just scaring people. I think the shared love in most haunted attraction people is that they love getting scared too. Like most haunted attraction people, I would say their primary love is not scaring people; it's getting scared, and they want to scare forward. And that's what I want you to do, dear listener.
Scare
lovely. Forward.
Hey, scare it forward.
Yeah.
That's what I like to say.
New sticker.
Hey, put that down. Hey, take it. What's in your mouth? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Great American Scream. If you enjoyed, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or leave a rating on Spotify. Follow us on Spotify. Tell a friend about the show. Go get that friend that you have. You go into their room, you knock on their door, you say, "Hey, I got a good show for you. It's called The Great American Scream. That's this show. Hey, Adam, can you put up our social medias, please?"
Yes, you can check us out on Facebook at The Great American Scream or on Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok at Great Scream Pod.
No.
Please send us your favorite haunted attractions. I want to know more haunted attractions I don't already know about. Your favorite local spot. Tweet at us. You can tweet at us or post using the hashtag TGAS. And as always, if there is something you would like to hear about on the show, tweet at us or make a post because your suggestion may become the topic for a future episode.
Yes. Special thank you goes out to Michael Segudo for doing the intro disclaimer, as well as Stevie Viella for doing the intro and outro music. And a super special magical thank you, a Disney thank you to our patrons on the level of Man in the Fields or higher. Thank you so much to Regina, Ben, Gail, Joyce, Melinda, and Chris. I have been Devin Wright.
I've been Adam O'Connell.
And hopefully you have been spooked.
And hopefully you're scaring forward. Scare forward.
Scare it forward. Hopefully you are spooked. And even if you have been injured by the spook, you cannot come at us in a court of law.
Legally.
The Louisiana Court of Appeals will strike you down.
Because you agreed to this.